Welcome to this explainer. In my counseling practice, I constantly meet incredibly bright, capable people who feel just completely crushed by the weight of everyone else's expectations. If that resonates with you at all, well, you are definitely in the right place. Today, we're unpacking a deeply liberating framework that we rely on heavily in behavioral therapy. It's called Adlerian psychology, and it honestly holds the clinical key to true, lasting freedom and happiness. So, get comfortable and let's explore this together.
I want you to picture a young man for a second. This is a profile I see sitting across from me in sessions all the time. On paper, to the outside world, he looks like a total success. But internally, he feels like he's locked in an invisible cage. Every single morning, he wakes up just vibrating with anxiety. He's agonizing over what his boss thinks of him, he's stressing over whether his parents are actually proud of him, and he's constantly checking social media to see if his friends genuinely accept him. Deep down, he's convinced that his painful past has permanently hardwired him, and that his future is just his unavoidable, predetermined path. Sounds exhausting, right? And maybe a little too familiar?
Part 1. The Cage of Expectations. Breaking Free from Psychological Dependency. Okay, let's dive into this. That young man's story perfectly captures a super common modern condition, psychological dependency. But here's the good news. There's a way out. Alfred Adler, who is literally one of the massive pillars of 20th-century psychology, proposed a revolutionary framework for human behavior. To understand it, look at the contrast. On one side, you have Sigmund Freud's theory of etiology, which basically says our present is chained to our past experiences and traumas. But Adler? He championed teleology. He argued, brilliantly, that we are absolutely not determined by what happened to us in the past. Instead, we are driven by the goals we are striving toward. We aren't being endlessly pushed from behind by our trauma. We are being pulled forward by our future. As a counselor, I can't tell you what a massive, empowering shift in perspective that is.
Part 2. The separation of tasks. Reclaiming your boundaries.
So to actually reach those goals, we first have to figure out what baggage actually belongs to us. In therapy, we use a core Adlerian concept for this called the separation of tasks. It sounds incredibly simple, but clinically it is a game changer. Adler pointed out that almost all of our interpersonal conflicts happen because our psychological boundaries get super blurred. We're either constantly meddling in other people's tasks, or we're letting them meddle in ours. By separating these tasks, we build a much healthier internal locus of control. We start to really believe, hey, I can actually influence my own life. You pour your energy into what you can change, and you gracefully let go of what ultimately belongs to someone else.
The whole concept is perfectly captured by that old proverb. You can lead a horse to water, but you cannot make it drink. True self-change is always 100% the responsibility of the individual. Think about a kid who won't do their homework. Fundamentally, studying is the child's task, right? Because they're the one who ultimately has to face the real-world consequences of not learning the material. As a parent, your love makes you want to support them and lead them to the water. But coercion, forcing it, that almost always backfires into resentment and fractures the relationship. Relinquishing the tasks of others isn't you being selfish. It's literally the ultimate act of psychological liberation.
Part 3. Courage to be disliked. Abandoning the need for recognition.
Now, shedding those external expectations brings us to a really tough hurdle for most people, our deep, burning need for recognition. Look, it's a completely natural evolutionary trait. It kept our ancestors safe in their tribes. But today, if that need for approval becomes your main driving force, it turns your life into a form of psychological servitude. Listen to this incredibly liberating principle from Adler. You are not living to satisfy the expectations of others, and others are not living to satisfy yours. Just let that sink in for a second. Trying to please everyone is not just impossible, it's exhausting, and it actively destroys your personal identity. You just disappear into the crowd.
In behavioral psychology, we frequently see this intense fear of judgment trigger something called self-handicapping. This is where we literally invent obstacles for ourselves to justify a potential failure, just to protect our fragile egos. We don't try, so we can't be judged if we fail. What Adler teaches us is that having the courage to be disliked isn't about being a jerk or being confrontational. Not at all. It's just the natural, peaceful byproduct of practicing the separation of tasks. You live your life authentically, and whether someone else admires you or judges you for it, well, that's their task, not yours.
Part 4. Energia. The present moment. Living fully in the here and now.
Once we finally stop obsessing over everyone's judgment, it radically changes how we experience time itself. We are so conditioned to view life as this rigid, straight line. Like, today is just a stressful, temporary stepping stone to some magical future where we'll finally be happy. Adler completely threw that idea out. He proposed the concept of energia. This is a state where the actual process of living is the result. Life isn't a continuous line drawn toward a finish line. It's a sequence of totally independent moments happening right now. Think of it like a dance. When you dance, you aren't just trying to get to the other side of the room as fast as possible. The entire point, the real joy, is in the act of dancing itself.
And this brilliantly illustrates how Adler was light years ahead of his time, because he was predicting major concepts we use in modern practice today. Look at flow, the state psychologist Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi described, where we find optimal concentration and deep satisfaction in exactly what we're doing. And right next to it is mindfulness, the ability to stay fully present without letting anxiety drag you away. When we shine the spotlight of our attention solely on the present moment, when we live in that state of energia, the past and the future completely lose their grip on us. Yes, your past happened, but it absolutely does not have the authority to dictate your behavior right now.
Part 5. Happiness through social interest. Reconnecting with the world.
Now, with all this focus on separating tasks and not caring what people think, Adlerian psychology might sound a bit isolating. But it's actually the exact opposite. True psychological freedom is about finding your meaningful place in a broader network. It's about what Adler called social interest. And he gave us a really beautiful 3-step process for this. Step 1 is self-acceptance. This isn't toxic positivity. It's honestly looking at our unchangeable flaws, accepting them, and focusing only on what we can grow. Once we have that grounded self-acceptance, we unlock Step 2, confidence in others. We stop viewing everyone around us as a hostile judge, and we start seeing them as allies. And feeling safe with our allies naturally leads us to Step 3, contribution to others.
And we have the clinical data to back this up. A 2010 study by Myers showed that people who engage in activities that benefit their community report significantly higher life satisfaction than people who only chase personal gain. Adler knew this decades ago. The profound realization that you were genuinely useful to someone else, that is the ultimate sustainable source of human happiness. It generates a deep sense of meaning that goes way, way beyond just helping yourself.
Which leads us to the profound Adlerian paradox of today's explainer. Achieving personal freedom absolutely does not lead to a life of isolation. In fact, it's the exact opposite. Only when you possess the courage to live completely independent of social expectations can you ever genuinely connect with another human being. You have to learn to stand firmly on your own 2 feet, taking full responsibility for your own life before you can truly and authentically belong to a society. Freedom isn't running away from the community, it's having the strength to exist inside it as your true self.
So, we're right back where we started, but hopefully the view looks a little different now. We've walked through separating your tasks, finding the courage to let go of judgment, living vividly in the present moment, and finding joy in contributing to others. The clinical tools to liberate yourself are right here. So, I'm going to leave you with one final question to chew on. Will you take responsibility for your own freedom and finally step out of that invisible cage today? The door is open. The choice, as Adler would say, is entirely yours.